How much do you know about your piano? How much you know about its history? But you would many, those there, have to say, we know more about our past, our family, than our piano. Yet you stand in one court or another and submit to tell the whole truth. And that truth itself is about your past, which you could not have known. But others know this.
We receive the remains of our brother Richard with confidence in God, the giver of life, who raised the Lord Jesus from the dead. He brought nothing into this world, and we can carry nothing out. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord.
When you make a sound, it may be like this. You expect it to be heard. When it is heard, it is assumed. It's by caliber of its pitch, its timbre, or its feel in audibility, or its placement by percussion, its breech, its loading, and by which breech loading is its instrument, by which they call as truth, or by those which in 1864 slayed so many Danes, by breech loading weapons. At the Battle of San Mark, about 8 millimeters south of Flensburg, pursuing Austrians caught up with the Danish rear and lost by the ranks of the Danes more to them than 500 men, that this was only a minor battle. And by such war, the Second Schleswig War, was bought more than 200,000 Danes under German federal rule. This is about how music cannot heal. It is only people who can heal. This is a story not about Johann Strauss, the inventor of the waltz. It might be more Richard Strauss, the inventor of the destiny. Whose destiny? Is that truth? Destiny? Or does it lie, as time lies?
who were baptized into the death of my Son, our Saviour Jesus Christ, may continually put to death our evil desire, and be buried with him. And that through the grave and face of death, we may pass to our joyful resurrection.
Richard Strauss, Johann Strauss. Music is entirely different. The waltz is as different to Johann Strauss as the noise can be to Richard Schumann of the wall. Oh, the music and the notes of Schumann may match the Chopin, but they have no measure of heredity, of the same facts of either composer. Yet you stand in court and you say, I will tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth. I show you something, viewer. My piano, how it was destroyed from times when they will claim it was never invented, and how it was invented, I will show you more. Absolutely beggar's belief is before the time of the Tudor dynasty. It goes back before the time of the Lancastrians. It goes back before the Yorkists. It goes back before the Black Prince. It explains in English law why one or more as 21 kings could not even manage what they knew as law. It explains why the 1215 Magna Carta even failed. And you talk and stand for justice. You talk and stand for what is your right. You talk and stand for the William who was the conqueror and who, by its invasion at Hastings, you think you are British. You, my British folk, are not even national. Where you came from, you ask 90% of you, you will not know. You will only know when you were born, because you were told about it. This is the story of my piano from about 850 AD, and the enshrined obedience to that which was Roman, but no way measured by the Church of Rome and in Holy Roman Emperor from about 850 AD. And we can exclude much of the Saxons, but which is the past, there is no mistaking that is true. But those who tell you that the piano was invented in 1700, I will prove to you, are lies. As much as the death, as much by King Henry VIII of his 6 wives, and even more council were put to death by beheading in the Tower of London. This is the story that they did not want you to know. This is the story of my piano. You are asking Fernando for a message for this Palm Sunday. That the following is about what the histories have hidden from you, or have told you, or you think you did not know, or you would not be bothered what is your future while you sleep. Your future is already written. Bid for a piano was founded in the performance not of any home, but in royal circles of the virginals, giving rise through the spinet to the harpsichord, which was in effect an instrument which no one in any domesticity could afford outside of imperial court. This was founded abroad in such enterprise that was accomplished in Tuscany by Bartolomeo Cristofori in the invention of il pianoforte. Bartolomeo Cristofori, born in 1655, died in 1731, had by 1700, to put a precise date on it, noted in the records of Federico Maccali, notes that the arpi timpello de piano e forte was made by Cristofori in 1700, giving us a precise birth date for the piano. An artistic inventor is a sophisticated action. So sophisticated was his action for his pianos that at the one time of the instrument's inception he solved many of the technical problems that continued for many as 75 years to puzzle even the greatest technicians in its evolution, and whose action complexity was in part later dropped by many makers consistently up until the time even of Sebastian Erard and his inventions. And by the time he died, he had built many for the Medici family, for whom he worked in Tuscany. There are those in England who then were administrators really much from the time of King Henry VIII, unless you want to take King Henry VII, whose slaying of Richard III at Bosworth, would have you understand that there was no right or rule by those who would be allowed so much to speak for it. That gave as many bones to be dug up from the Leicestershire car park under the council offices, from the previous placement of them in sanctified ground, to be reinterred in Leicester Cathedral a few weeks ago. That gave us rise to much, or fall as much, as by 50 years later, 1536, the execution by King Henry VIII of his wife, Queen Anne Boleyn, who had not given birth to anyone significantly except the future Queen Elizabeth I of England, who ruled from 1558 until her death in March 1603, when James I came to the throne, first of England, sixth of Scotland. That as much as what happened to 6 wives of the King, Henry VIII, you may wonder, or not wonder, for even in the process of history there is little that can be deemed as any truth, for reason that there is less evidence of it as fact than other the bare fact that Queen Anne Boleyn did lose her head. But if you take the death of music in the continent and the birth in 1756 of one of the greatest keyboard players of his time, that the following is about what the histories have hidden from you, and during the times of this my piano, you say to yourself, my piano. From its demise in Italy through the English Revolution of 1888, of 1688 through George 1, 2, 3, George 1, 2, 3, George 1, 2, 3, Joyce 1, 2, 3, Eliza and her brother Lucian. Bonaparte, during the rise of the consulate, set up art and literary diplomatic council at the Hotel de Blasek and took control of Lucian, his two daughters, when his wife died, placing Charlotte the eldest at Madame Campion boarding school for girls at Saint-Germain-en-Laye. That the following is about what you historians have hidden from the world. You, during the times of this my piano, you say, "This my piano. This mine, pianoforte." From its demise in Berlin, or is the demise in Italy? Through the Italy-English revolution of 1688, through George 1, 2, 3, where George was born in Hanover, British king, born in Hanover. It's not too difficult to understand, no? There is a piano in manufacturing industry since Elizabeth Chiaroy, Princess of Lucca Piombino, Grand Duchess of Tuscany, Countess of Campignano, is where the piano was invented. Founder of girls' school. Eliza and her brother Lucian, during the rise of the consulate, set up the arts and literary and dramatic council. And he's not so bad, this brother yours you hate, this emperor, short Napoleon, poser. Wherefore you learn these things, mine British people, mine folk, and sets up arts and literary council, Elisa Bonaparte, Bacchiocchi Lavoie, and dramatic council at the Hotel de Blasek, and took control, that's Paris, of Lucian, his two daughters, that his wife died, placing Charlotte, the eldest of the daughters, in the Madame Campion boarding school for girls at Saint-Germain-en-Laye. At Saint-Germain-en-Laye. You are asking for Fernando message for this Palm Sunday, so that you are asking for it. Why? Because you cannot play it yourself, or because you want to see her play the piano for herself, so that relieves you of this duty. For that reason you cannot answer it for yourself. This is why your histories are not mine. Did yours lie? Or did they tell you what was the facts? Or the facts by who told you them was different to who else told you other facts, which were supposed to be the same. And then you ask, is why your histories are not mine. Did yours lie? You may well ask, as much as you play the Schumann, as much as yours may lie, when you more play a Chopin. So, do they lie now? Did they lie then? Do you accept them now? Or do you provide your just-so story? Your just-so story, the history they told to me, The meeting meaning your history, meeting past with present, that you know as fact. So you have some things to learn, which I am delighted to please be able to reveal to you. This is only one side of it. Do not take for your asking, Fernando, this message, this Palm Sunday, as a say gospel, that you are asking for it. You are asking for it for yourself, or for Fernando. You are Fernando. Let's say you are Fernando. That's for your reason. You cannot answer it for yourself. This is why your histories are not mine. It's yours as lie. Do they lie now? Do they lie then? Did they lie? Do you accept them now as the truth then? Or the truth that you know it now? Or do you provide just so this story, the history they told to me, meaning your? Which is your? And which of your is there, belonging to them? Would you say, could you honestly say, Fernando raised film, therefore, call your mistake. You say yourself, my mistake. Sorry, Fernando. We thought that is where you may be made the biggest step forward in your greatest purchase of your life, of il pianoforte, or where you lose it, or where you only just discover how the world is not where you live, but where you will be, or where others place you. For this is the story of you, Fernando. Bid for Piano was founded in the performance not of any home, but in royal circles of the virginals, giving rise through the spinet to the harpsichord, which was in effect an instrument which no one in any domesticity could afford outside of imperial court. This was founded abroad in such enterprise that was accomplished in Tuscany by Bartolomeo Cristofori in the invention of il pianoforte. Bartolomeo Cristofori, born in 1655, died in 1731, had by 1700, to put a precise date on it, noted in the records of Federico Macaulay, notes that the Arpi Timpello de Piano e Forte was made by Cristofori in 1700, giving us a precise birth date for the piano. An artistic inventor is a sophisticated action. So sophisticated was his action for his pianos that at the one time of the instrument's inception he solved many of the technical problems that continued for many as 75 years to puzzle even the greatest technicians in its evolution, and whose action complexity was in part later dropped by many makers consistently up until the time even of Sebastian Erard and his inventions. And by the time he died, he had built many for the Medici family, for whom he worked in Tuscany. There are those in England who then were administrators really much from the time of King Henry VIII, unless you want to take King Henry VII, whose slaying of Richard III at Bosworth, would have you understand that there was no right or rule by those
who would be allowed so much to speak for it. That gave as many bones to be dug up from the Leicestershire car park under the council offices, from the previous placement of them in sanctified ground, to be reinterred in Leicester Cathedral a few weeks ago. That gave as rise to much, or fall as much, as by 50 years later, 1536, the execution by King Henry VIII of his wife, Queen Anne Boleyn, who had not given birth to anyone significantly except the future Queen Elizabeth I of England, who ruled from 1558 until her death in March 1603, when James I came to the throne, first of England, sixth of Scotland. That as much as what happened to 6 wives of the King, Henry VIII, you may wonder, or not wonder, for even in the process of history, there is little that can be deemed as any truth, for reason that there is less evidence of it as fact than other the bare facts that Queen Anne Boleyn did lose her head. But if you take the death of music in the continent and the birth in 1756 of one of the greatest keyboard players of his time, that of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, who lived till 1791, you can trace what the empirical excellence of a country achieved, and you can ask yourself where it all went wrong for Austria in that visit to England by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart between 1763 and 1766, when he attended the royal household and was in part denied and sent to Chelsea hospital grounds. And the history is scant. But what happened to the pianoforte, is in fact written very clearly, although they be bare facts.
In 3 Silesian War, that is emanating from that claim wherein Teresa had by her father the claim that the throne would pass to her in 1739, but before he died in 1740, the 3 Silesian War of 1740-42, the 2nd Silesian War 1744-45, and the 3rd Silesian War from 1756 to 1763, in that the Silesian dynasty would pass not to her, but finally ended up in the hands of Prussia by the Treaty of Hubertusburg, signed on the 15th of February 1763 at Hubertusburg by Prussia, Austria and Saxony, which together with the Treaty of Paris, it marked the end of the 7 Years' War. Silesia remained Prussian, and Prussia clearly stood among the ranks of the great powers,
which lasted till 1746, when England, of course, had its own problems with its rebellions and re-Scotland and re-Bonnie Prince Charlie, who was the great pretender to the throne of England, which had only changed in 1688 to the placement of William III of Orange, who was basically a Netherlands prince with the arrival of the Dutch army in Torbay, Devon, to the throne of England, along with Mary II, whose death in 1694 gave England its monarch, in which descendants you may also question whose music. And now that preceding Mozart was given to the stage that made England more than the plays of Shakespeare written between his life to his death of 1616, more given to music by King Charles II and his affair with Nell Gwynn, one of the greatest actresses of her generation. So you ask yourself, where is the Bechstein in this? And it's very clear to see that if you follow the result of that First Silesian War, you can follow the result of the reconstitutional monarchy of France in the Bonaparte dynasty, which included not only Napoleon Bonaparte, but Elisa Bacchiacchi Bonaparte-Lavoie, who, as Napoleon's sister, was the Princess Tuscan and had effected the institution of boys' scholarship schooling and had overseen the fate of her brother Julian, his daughters, when their mother died, in sending them to the girls' school, Madame Campion. That you can see how Bechstein was formed in Berlin when you look at how England stopped Napoleon achieving the Confederation of the Rhine, how England prevented that by 1813 after Napoleon's defeat at Leipzig, Moscow 1812, Leipzig 1813, that made the Treaty of Pressburg in the Confederation of the Rhine almost extinct. You can see how that Treaty of Pressburg was, by such distinctions by the Allies, put into that extinction in that 1805 Confederation of the Rhine, that so made succinct the prowess of the Allies to appropriate the borders of France and Austria by the wars of the Austro-Prussian and the Franco-Prussian wars of 1866 and 1870. It almost, viewer, beggars belief that the pianoforte was ever allowed to be invented. And you may ask yourself what happened to Bechstein in the wars. World War I. Well, you would have to look at the causes of World War I, and you would be told that it was the assassination of Franz Ferdinand and his wife on 28th
June 1914 in Sarajevo.
But for those harder scholars who look deeper unto the drawers of chastity, ignorance, or plain silence, you will see that the Constitution of the Rhine was not only obliterated by Waterloo of 1815 and the subsequent exile of the Allies, exiling Napoleon Bonaparte to his ultimate island of fate until his death in 1821, but you can see
By the Second Schleswig War of 1864 and the birth of Bechstein in Berlin,
what was actually the permission granted by not the country that is England that had invented the piano, for the invention had been invented itself in Italy, but by that administration of the son-in-law of Queen Victoria, Her Majesty Queen of England from 1836 of Great Britain until 1901. Her son-in-law, who was Frederick Karl Nicolau, married to her daughter, eldest daughter, Princess Vicky. You can see how the management by the house that is England administered a country, a border, by some devoted mismanagement or some devoted intention that claimed the son-in-law to fight in 1864 in 2 or 3 battles
by the Second Schleswig War of 1864 and the birth of Bechstein in Berlin
on the part of Austria, along with Prussia, against Denmark, and in which one battle there were some 3,000 dead. In another battle, which was at Gabau, that was decisive and taken by siege on the 18th of April 1864. The Battle of Alsen, A-L-S-E-N, 29th of June 1864, left 3,000 dead of Danish, wounded and captured. The battle was the last major event of the war. And the Battle of Lundby, a minor battle on the 23rd of July, which saw the last of the Second Schleswig War battles, the result being a clear defeat for Denmark, the Danish side losing 32 dead, 44 wounded and 20 prisoners, while Prussian losses were only 3 wounded. And what did this achieve for the foundation of Bechstein was very clear, that by 1866, in the Austro-Prussian War, that Karl Frederick Wilhelm, the husband of Princess Vicky, fought on the side of Prussia against Austria interests. And the war was fought for supremacy, which we are told in the German land, ended with a victory for Prussia and its allies over Austria and its allies, and resulted in the German Confederation. Where, you judge, were these causes of the World War I and World War II? For so blatantly is obvious that in that founding of 1866 of the North German Confederation was the embodiment for the further surrounding in 1870 by the Prussians and starving Paris, supported by Karl Frederick Wilhelm, the eldest and most estranged as British, or attained as affectionately British, son-in-law of Queen Victoria. That if you look at the formation of Bechstein in the 1860s, you can see how it emanated from the displacement of Napoleon Bonaparte, sent to exile by the Allies after Waterloo, 1815. You can see why the Treaty of Pressburg was put into that extinction in that 1805 Confederation of the Rhine by the Allies, which was England then. You only have to look at the Second Schleswig War of 1864, fought by the son-in-law of a king spent, Prince Albert, as consort, not king, since his death in 1857, approximately, that the eldest son-in-law of the Queen Victoria fought in those 3 battles of 1864 of the War of the Second Austrian Succession, culminating in some 3,000 dead in the Battle of Alsen, A-L-S-E-N, some almost 5 weeks of a siege at the Battle of Dybol, D-Y-B-B-O-L, on the 18th of April 1864. Alsen was the 29th of June, which saw 3,000 dead, Danish, wounded and captured. And that's the last major battle of the war, the final battle being the Battle of Lundby on the 23rd of July 1864, which was the last of the Second Schleswig War battles, the result being a clear defeat for Denmark. The Danish side lost 32 dead, 44 wounded and 20 prisoners, whilst Prussian losses were only 3 wounded. 3 wounded. Explains how the pianoforte was taken from Austria and dumped in the provinces of Prussia, that by the 1866 Austro-Prussian War would see Karl Frederick Wilhelm, husband of Princess Vicky, daughter of Queen Victoria, not fighting this time in 1866 for the Austrians which he'd fought in 1864, but fighting this time on the side of Prussia against the Austrians. The Battle of Hohenwasser was the first battle of the Austro-Prussian War between Prussia and Austria on the 27th of June 1866, and Prussia was victorious. Second battle of Podel was the site of a battle in the Austro-Prussian War between Prussia and Austria. Prussia was victorious. Battle of Trautenau on 27th, 28th of June 1866. In the first battle of Trautenau, an Austrian corps forced Prussia onto the retreat. The following day it was defended by the Prussian Guard. Striking were the most highest losses of the Austrians, with over 8,000 dead, 4 times that of Prussia, due to the use of the Prussian army of breech-loading weapons. On the Battle of Nachod, N-A-C-H-O-D, 27th of June 1866, the battle fought in Bohemia, in which the Prussian army defeated the Austrian army, and the Battle of Langensalza, Langensalza, the 27th of June 1866. Oh, it goes on that the battle was the first major battle on the eastern theatre of that Austro-Prussian War, but the results of all these battles was, in no doubt, some many battles of 1866, something like 20 battles, I haven't counted them, they're so numerous, which resulted in the formation of the North German Confederation. The victory was not Austria's, which for which Mozart had fought. Mozart has by now become the lie. That you take 1870 and the Treaty of Sedan, that failed of France to achieve its might in Mexico with Marshal Bazaine, and the surrounding of Paris by the Prussian army, leaves one in no doubt as to why Bechstein was victorious in its hometown of Berlin. That by 1888 sees come to the throne that son-in-law of Queen Victoria, Frederick Karl Wilhelm Nikolaus, who became Emperor of Germany for a few months in 1888 before passing away. You only have to look at the causes of the First World War and declare that they were not so much the assassination of Franz Ferdinand and his wife on the 28th of June. The formation of Germany and the rise of Hitler was created by Great Britain, was created by Prussia, because were it not so, then it would have been accepted more peaceably than all the attempts by 1914 had failed by which to achieve a peace. That after the war, what made Bechstein great is a bone of contention. Are these bones of Richard III, you ask? These bones are the contention of the rise of some, at one stage by 1930, some 30 parties in German politics. For what? No reason, or some reason. The reason was that why a victory would not, in the case of 1918, be declared such, and an Emperor Wilhelm II was sent off to Holland. The reasons become suddenly unclear in 2 treaties at Versailles, one of which, at which the Germans were not represented internationally by the fact that the Germans were not allowed their voice And America, for instance, was not present at one of those treaties of 1918, and the effects of Versailles till 1921. What happened to Il Pianoforte is declared and made clear so much from the events of not only 1934 in Germany, with the chancellery becoming under not Ludendorff by Herr Hitler, but by October 1935 with the annexation of Benito Mussolini of the provinces around Abyssinia, by which the United Nations, then called the League of Nations, imposed trade restrictions and across the seaways, which affected imports and exports. That by January 1936, on the death of His Majesty King George V, would see the abdication of King Edward VIII and the subsequent succession of his brother Bertie, King George VI. What happened to Il Pianoforte since Mozart, since King Charles II, since King Henry VIII, since the 7th Henry, since Richard III was never allowed in Bosworth Field, even to the sound of the right of reply, any more than one of 6 wives of King Henry VIII, or his court musician, Mr. Mark Smeaton, who along with 5 other alleged conspirators accused of having sex with Anne Boleyn, were executed by May 1536. The truth is so hard, isn't it, to understand. Facts are so hard, aren't they, to undertake to any real belief in who founded a piano industry or who lost it. I would not be the first seller to want to even express any approval or disapproval for what happened. But what happened is stated in all the places on the net. And you can argue about what is a democracy, and you can argue about what is a dictatorship. But the truth is, isn't it, that there is an element of more truth, that the dictatorship, the rise of the great dictator, which for more reason of injustice makes the democracy more to be the lie. Viewer, I thank you for listening. I submit to your integrity many who are better players than this girl, and I ask you never to regard your past as what others tell you merely it is so more to be.